Hello, welcome to the session. We are just going to give people a few moments to join the webinar. I can see people coming in slowly, so we'll just allow a moment or two for everybody to join us today. People still coming in. I can see the numbers going up and joining us. So we'll just allow a little bit more time to everybody to join us. Welcome to people coming into the session. We'll be starting in just a moment when everyone's had a chance to get in. Hello, and welcome to this ETOA webinar on a review of the summer season. I am delighted to be joined once again by Juan Gomez from our data partners at ForwardKeys. And we've run several of these data-focused sessions now, and they're always very interesting. So we're looking forward to hearing from you in a moment, Juan. A couple of housekeeping points before I hand over. Juan's presentation today will be available straight after the session, so we'll be sending that out to you, and it will also be on our Insight Hub, so that'll be available very shortly afterwards. Feel free to post questions anytime using the Q&A facility, and either we'll get to them during the session, or if not, we can answer them offline afterwards. So post there through the Q&A session. And so, Juan, a very warm welcome, and do let us know how has summer been for Europe this year?
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everybody. Greetings from Valencia. Thanks, of course, to our partners ETOA for having us back, and thank you all for tuning in. We're all getting tired of online events, so I'm thrilled to see so many of you could make it today. We really do appreciate your interest and continued support. When we planned this webinar, we were thinking that now would be a perfect time to reconnect, as the start of September is a classic moment when plenty of travel professionals are feeling the pain of what I would call a data gap. And what is a data gap? In short, a situation when you have data about your own performance this summer, for instance, but you're unable to put them into perspective because the official statistics for your destination won't be available before 1 or 2 months at best. With the changes that have shaken up the travel industry over the past 2 years, it's crucial to know just how you fit into the global picture. And it's also key to understand what the future has in store. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'll try to be quick, I'll be doing my utmost to shed some light on these questions. We'll also focus on some traveler profiles that could work as accelerators for the recovery of your destination or businesses. We'll take a close look at the top performers this summer, booking lead times, the impact of heat waves and natural catastrophes, and how long-haul travelers have come to stay. Before finishing, I would also like to take a sneak peek at current booking trends for autumn and Christmas holidays. Yes, we've got a lot of ground to cover, so let me get started. But before I do so, just a few words about the kind of data we use at ForwardKeys and what do we do. As much as I hope you're all familiar with ForwardKeys, this may not be the case for all participants today. ForwardKeys is a travel analytics company specializing in air travel. On the supply side, we know when and where airlines intend to fly and how many seats they schedule. On the demand side, we monitor searches carried out before a trip, the bookings made, and tickets issued. All of this in near real time. In short, we predict the future with a data-powered crystal ball that actually works. Now that we're clear on the data, here's what it's shown us. I'll start with the global outlook to put things into context. Year to date, the Americas continues leading the way to pre-pandemic travel recovery, just 16% behind the volumes seen between January and August 2019. When excluding the results of Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, the recovery for Europe post-COVID has reached 80% so far this year. So it's following the Americas closely. After the reopening of major Asian destinations like Japan in October 2022 and China in January this year, we're finally seeing reactivation of the APAC region. However, year-to-date traveler volumes are still around half of 2019 levels. Results for the summer, however, show how recovery in Europe has not been as widespread and fast as expected, only improving by 4 percentage points to 84% of 2019 volumes. Yes, many destinations in Europe have shown resilience and strong results, but it's not the same for all destinations. And I'll get more into that in just a moment. The apparent slowdown in recovery to the Middle East has been caused by the shifting dates of the Feast of Sacrifice, which in 2019 was in August and this year was in June, highlighting the huge role religious, sporting, and cultural events continue to play in the travel industry, particularly for that region. As expected, we've seen the sharpest increases in APAC travel. As I was saying earlier, European travel recovery has somewhat stagnated since the beginning of the year, but the outlook for the rest of the year is looking very positive, and the current issued tickets for travel at the end of November and December are above those issued at this point in 2019. Of course, the closer we get to those travel dates, the more reliable this data will be. But we believe this already indicates a very positive trend towards the end of the year. Or could also be a sign that travelers are anticipating more and more as a consequence of less disposable income and more price sensitiveness. They might be booking earlier to secure cheaper holidays. Today's main topic is the review of the summer. So I'll continue with some in-depth analysis of top performers and key trends during the past couple of months. As we have witnessed throughout the last few years, it's still Southern Europe that is driving recovery in the continent. Overall figures to Europe were just 16% behind 2019 levels, but that doesn't tell the full story. Major holiday destinations such as Greece have already surpassed 2019 levels for arrivals this summer, while Portugal, Iceland, and Turkey are closing the gap with 2019 levels. However, it's smaller destinations such as Albania, Slovenia, North Macedonia that have shown the best performance. Last year, we saw how well Albania was performing, offering tourist adventure and nature opportunities in a not yet mainstream destination. Interestingly, Albania is performing strongly versus 2019, but compared with last year, it has dropped 7 places in our rankings, suggesting the larger, urban, and more typical holiday destinations are starting to make a final comeback. Of course, during COVID years, nature destinations were more popular as people seek to avoid crowds, but we're seeing how urban destinations, as I was mentioning, are performing better and better. And yes, it's the usual tourist hotspots like Antalya in Turkey benefiting from arrivals from Russia, or Athens that are performing more strongly than the rest, but we've seen interesting numbers in Madrid, Nice, in France, or Dublin too. If we look at the largest increases in the rankings of most resilient destinations in Europe, once again, we observe how Tirana in Albania stands out as the one experiencing the highest improvement versus 2019. But interestingly, we see also how smaller and less known Greek islands have climbed the ladder. And surprisingly, we see destinations such as Rhodes, devastated by wildfires, doing pretty well despite the ominous scenes seen in the news this summer. Yes, wildfires and other natural disasters like the earthquake experienced in Marrakesh keep on impacting our industry and do have an immediate impact on arrival numbers. But our industry keeps showing great resilience. Just 2 weeks after the wildfires in Rhodes, new tickets for future travel to the Greek destination returned to 80% of pre-pandemic ticketing levels. As we speak, are now back to growth. However, obviously, these more and more recurrent events should make us think about whether we really are prepared for the changes that may bring to our industry, or not quite. Extreme temperatures across the Mediterranean each summer make the headlines, as most of our cities don't seem to be prepared with the consequences of climate change. Without any doubt, the major story this year for travel in Europe this summer has been the extreme heat waves, followed by the unprecedented wildfires and floods, all unquestionable signs of climate change. July was the hottest month ever recorded at a global level. And here in Valencia, we've seen at least 3 major heat waves with high temperatures of close to 47 degrees recorded in July, the highest ever recorded. This could affect the destination choices of holidaymakers in the short and medium term, and we have already started seeing some signs. For example, in August, the percentage share of flight searches made for intra-European travel shifted compared with the previous month of July, in favor of Western and Northern Europe. Southern European destinations may become more popular in the less hot autumn, winter, and spring season, whilst more northern destinations could become more popular in the summer. So far, the impact on tickets has been limited, with final international arrivals to Southern Europe in July only 7% below pre-pandemic arrival levels. Overall, just 6% below where they were or what we were expecting at the beginning of the summer season. This obviously suggests a slowdown in the purchasing of last-minute tickets, so we'll have to be on top of new developments and get prepared for changes in seasonality as well as traveler preferences in the future. Of course, there have been many positives to talk about this summer, so I'd like to touch on a few of them as I believe they'll remain key in the next few months to come. As I was hinting earlier, travelers have started to book earlier than usual. Summer trips to Europe this summer were booked more in advance than in 2022 and even 2019. The percentage share of trips booked further in advance has significantly changed from 2019. In 2019, the last year of normality, if you wish, before COVID, a large proportion of bookings did still come in the last 30 days before traveling. In 2022, the largest percentage share was for trips with a window of 30 to 90 days. Now in 2023, the largest percentage share were trips booked with a window of 90 days or more, representing 30% of all international arrivals to Europe this summer. We believe this anticipation responds to travelers trying to secure good deals and save on flight fares, but this could also extend to other parts of the industry. Now, changing topics, I'd like to focus or touch on key source markets. Looking at travel recovery from an outbound perspective, globally, we can clearly see that North America is driving recovery both globally and to Europe. Departures this summer to Europe grew by 9% from North America, highlighting its importance, although obviously if you look at closely, the growth for the rest of the world destinations was a point above. Perhaps one of the most concerning numbers on this chart is the figure that refers to intra-European trips, performing below those trips European travelers have taken to other parts of the world. Europeans, now that restrictions are over, have turned their eyes to more exotic long-haul destinations that are now finally open, and trips this summer to Thailand, Colombia, or Argentina have been trending. Something to keep in mind, as the upcoming autumn and winter season usually sees European travelers taking shorter trips, and this could be the opportunity to attract them back. Looking at long-haul markets traveling to Europe, specifically, we can see, as I was saying, that North American markets are all marking growth versus 2019, with Mexico already 12% higher than the volume seen in summer 2019. The US remains the largest long-haul origin market, and with a growth of 7%, it is a crucial market for European travel recovery, and of course, we'd like to see now coming into the following months. Many European cities have seen significant growth from the US this summer, and it's once again Southern European cities that are proving most popular. Lisbon tops the charts for most growing destination for the Americas, of course, powered by strong capacity, direct with the US, whilst Milan, Athens, and Rome are all way above pre-pandemic levels too. Interestingly, Edinburgh remains a popular choice for Americans, perhaps those looking for nature getaways, popular whiskey tasting tours, or golf courses, the key offerings from Scotland. And one of the key things here is like how well Scotland has been promoted in very popular TV and series that shows across the US. And this remains, of course, one of Europe's biggest opportunities with the USA, as visitors from there are also high spending, and we have to take advantage of that. The fact of the matter, as I'm saying, is that on the US market, luxury travel is coming back with a vengeance. The summer premium travelers from the US, that is those traveling at the front of the plane, heading off to Europe, surpassed 2019 levels by no less than 44%. And this is a spectacular increase. By comparison, the economy segment was just in line with pre-COVID levels, plus 1%. It's not just North America that are showing these signs of high-end travelers recovering faster. We've been mentioning this for the past couple of years, but now we're still seeing these numbers. From Latin America, we see an impressive 3 percentage point increase in shares of premium cabins, again, highlighting the increased demand for those big spenders. We've seen a spectacular increase in numbers of premium travelers from Colombia, Mexico, and Brazil, who all registered double-digit growth compared to pre-pandemic levels. Looking east, the Chinese tourism recovery, as I was mentioning on our latest webinar with ETOA at the beginning of the summer, is still in progress, but it is advancing swiftly compared to Japan. For weeks after the initial lifting of travel restrictions, both countries showed similar levels of outbound travel recovery at approximately 15% of pre-pandemic levels. However, in the subsequent months, a disparity emerged, and we still see it apparent to this day. By the 28 weeks mark after restrictions were lifted, China's outbound travel nearly reached 0.5% of its 2019 figures, whereas Japan only managed to recover around 30% of the previous year's numbers during the equivalent period. For trips from China to Europe this summer, we can see that the Netherlands is the furthest towards recovery, just 38% down versus 2019. And this for the Chinese market is a notable recovery, well above the regional average of -63. Several factors, just as seat capacity, fares, visas, and passport renewals, continue to impact recovery from China. But with the recent news allowing group tours to just shy of 140 countries, we can expect recovery of the Chinese market to continue in the coming months. And just before I continue with an outlook on what's to be expected in the months to come, I'd like to highlight the importance of events in attracting tourism. International arrivals to Valencia for the week of the 28th of August, where it celebrated the famous La Tomatina festival at the famous tomato battle in a small town just in the vicinity of Valencia city, grew by 4% versus 2019 levels. Recovery for arrivals from China to Spain during that week reached an impressive 70% of 2019 levels, whilst the previous week was only at 49%, and the following week fell down to 60% of 2019 levels. Despite the lack of direct connectivity, Chinese arrivals to Valencia this week represented 11% of all visits from China to our city between July and September. And this peak contrasts obviously with the distribution of Chinese arrivals to all Southern Europe and Spain, which are spread more evenly throughout the summer season. Time is flying. I'm conscious about time, and I would like to leave also room for some of the questions later. And we still have one more important topic to cover, the outlook for the remainder of the year. And this is a sensitive topic because recession in some economies is looming, inflation remains high, etc., etc. So what are the current booking trends? Looking forward at the last 3 months of the year, we can see the current outlook is very positive. As we have seen, lead times are getting longer, which could distort forward-looking results. However, as of the beginning of September, results for Q4 to Europe are set to grow by 2% versus 2019, and globally results are just 3% behind. Obviously, APAC continues to accelerate towards recovery. As well as the positive outlook for tickets issued for the final quarter, we can also see very encouraging results of air supply. Airlines are banking on increased demand towards the end of the year, with 1% more seats scheduled to flight compared with 2019. Many countries in Europe see further growth in capacity, with Greece plus 23%, Turkey plus 22%, and Portugal plus 17% standing out. Tickets issued for outbound travel from the UK during the upcoming autumn half-term week are looking very positive as well, with plus 30% versus last year and just 6% behind pre-pandemic arrival levels. The crucial period for booking trips is yet to come, with huge increase in tickets issued for summer in both 2019 and 2022. Where will 2023 performance stand in the end? We'll see. Going back to seat capacity data, air supply from the UK during the half-term is set to grow by 1% overall and by 2% to Europe. Again, highlighting the fact that airlines are expecting a very strong performance for this upcoming holiday and lots of intra-European trips. Zooming in on figures for December very quickly, we can once again see that Southern Europe is performing well. And crucially, Northern Europe, and this is the big news, is on track to grow over 2019 levels in December. Key winter attractions like the Northern Lights, visiting Santa in Lapland, and the ever more popular Christmas markets are driving this growth. Tickets as of 1st of September to Lapland are currently 30% above 2019 levels, and by looking at the volume of searches for arrivals in December, we can see that the interest for travel is widely coming from the UK, France, and the US. And for Christmas markets, on the other hand, here are some key destinations which have proved popular over the years, set once again to increase in air travel volumes, and specifically Basel and Vienna performing above 2019 levels for both intra-regional and long-haul arrivals. And the top searching markets being the USA, Spain, Canada, the UK, and Australia. So watch out for these long-haul markets. To finalize, just some key takeaways. First of all, highlight the fact that several European destinations are now growing versus pre-pandemic levels. We've seen, those queues in key attractions back in our cities, but others remain well behind due to different reasons. Second, traveler behavior is changing. Whilst fares remain high, flight bookings are being booked further in advance. So this is something destinations and companies should take into consideration when making their plans for the coming months. And finally, the outlook for the rest of the year looks extremely positive and could see overall continental growth versus 2019. But let's not forget, this could be the impact of these advanced bookings coming in early, so stay tuned. Last but not least, as Rachel was mentioning at the beginning of this presentation, you will be receiving a copy of this after the webinar, but I'll be happy to share our future insights via my LinkedIn account. So if we're not connected yet, please, there's never been a better time to visit my profile and press the button to follow or connect with me. Thank you, and over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Juan. And another interesting walk through everything that's been going on this summer and into the autumn. So thank you so much for sharing your insights on that. I think it's fantastic news that we can see the recovery of long haul markets, because obviously they're one of the most valuable markets for Europe. So wonderful to see the return of the US in such strong figures. I think what was interesting was with regard to Asia Pac obviously being the slowest recovering market. And when we were looking at this back at our Destinations Exchange event in June, we looked at some sentiment analysis for Asia Pac, and we could see there was a great reticence from the Japanese market still in terms of their intention to travel. And it's interesting that we've seen that borne out thus far with such a stark difference between Japan and China. And I suppose I was just wondering really whether we've got either any kind of explanation for why that might be, or any indication as to when we might be able to see more people from Japan returning. I wonder if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I think first of all, what we need to realize here is that we're still in a very incipient moment in the reactivation or recovery, if you like. We need to take ourselves back a couple of years to see when Europe reopened, and the fact is that Europeans started to travel regionally, even domestically, when it was the only possibility. And I think this is also perfectly extrapolable to APAC, and that applies of course to China and Japan. Of course, Japan being a more mature outbound market has a different behavior of that of China. In these past few years, the Chinese population, let's say, that is willing to take a trip has been increasing, whilst for Japan it's kind of like more stable. So that's something that we believe needs to be on top of our assumptions when analyzing this market. Of course, the Chinese are not only taking the skies to Europe or other parts of the world, but mainly to APAC destinations. So if we compare the recovery of APAC destinations for Chinese travelers, is also much better than Europe. And I think for this, the main thing is also capacity. The airlines are also not powering this recovery, and sometimes we need, you know, that supply-led demand, if you like, and at the moment it's also quite expensive. So it's a combination of factors. It's price sensitiveness. It's also, you know, the willingness of traveling. But we see that as well within Europe, with some markets, for example, the German market not having recovered back to pre-pandemic levels, and then seeing, for example, other outbound markets like the UK being quite resilient, and as I was only mentioning, well above last year's. If we take as an example the UK half term, and only 6% behind what it was in 2019, which are remarkable figures. And other markets that were, you know, quite unexpected, like Spain being one of the most recovered versus pre-pandemic so far. I'm talking about outbound market. So yeah, it's a case by case thing, and it also affects on the destination that we're talking. But we're seeing a very slow recovery. So those relying on the Japanese may want to find alternative long haul source markets, like it could be, you know, the US or Canada, but also Latin markets are growing very strongly into Europe.
Absolutely. Do please submit any questions you would like for Juan via the Q&A facility. That is open, and I can see what's coming in there. While that's happening, Juan, I also was really interested to see a big shift from what we've spoken about in the past with regards to the booking window. So your stats there showing that the booking window is lengthening again. I think that that's really interesting, because for the last couple of years, when we've been talking about trends that are here to stay through COVID, we'd all been speaking about the shorter booking window perhaps being something that we should learn to adapt our business processes for. Yeah. But I think the longer booking window returning presumably is presenting quite a challenge for forecasting, because are we basing if we're seeing increased numbers, are we basing that on the fact that it's more people coming, or is it just people booking earlier? It's very difficult to know where to pinpoint that against the backdrop of the last 3 years we've had of such short booking windows. I just wondered if you had any kind of strategies for coping with that at the moment, or what your view is on that.
Well, Rachel, you really are serving this on a silver plate for me. Well, data. What could I say? You know, coming from ForwardKeys. Well, I think this stresses very simply the need of everyone in the industry to be on top of the latest trends and any changes happening and affecting our industry. Indeed, we've seen lead times or booking times extending, and quite remarkably, because it's something that I have to admit we didn't expect. And then when looking at the summer results, we realized how well in advance people had booked their trips, and it's also something that it was impacting our analysis of the impact of those, you know, heat waves in southern Europe, or the fires in some key holiday destinations were having. Well, if you've booked your trip so well in advance to travel to the south of Europe, then you will probably not be changing the bookings last minute just because it's going to be really hot there. At the end of the day, that's kind of what you're expecting. But of course, those people booking last minute, and that's what I was reflecting on one of the slides earlier, those last minute bookings were the one affected, but those being short, like a smaller chunk of the total, then the impact was rather limited. So my answer to this will be to stay on top of things. I think we're going to have more opportunities. I'll be physically with you in London in not so long, and we will be able to tap into these trends and see whether there is something that is going as well and replicating into the autumn and winter months, or is something that just happened in the summer. But I think it will be fair to say that is a trend that might stay around whilst, you know, inflation is still high. people don't have as much disposable income for traveling as they did at the end of the pandemic, or the end of the pandemic restrictions. So now I guess we're finally coming back to, let's say, the old normal, where people tend to book well in advance. They try to favor those destinations and more affordable or cheaper holidays versus what we've seen in the past couple of years.
Yes, absolutely. And I think interesting to say that hopefully in a few more weeks' time, we'll be able to be a little bit clearer about forecasts for 2020.
Yeah.
And what Juan was referring to there is we're looking forward to having another discussion with Juan at our Global European Marketplace, the GEM conference, at the beginning of November. Juan's going to be joining us to talk about 2024 forecasts. We were just lamenting prior to the start of the webinar. It's actually only about 6 weeks away, November. So we will be there hopefully with a little bit more concrete stats for the forecasting. Juan, actually just thinking about this booking window and linking it with the heat waves, obviously, as we were discussing, is that could be one area where we might see a shorter booking window, particularly for the closer in markets for those places. I've had a question coming in on the Q&A, which was actually about data and how equipped destinations in heatwave and wildfire zones are with data, and just really asking your opinion on, do you think having data helped those destinations or could help those destinations with regards to handling the flows and dealing with comms and things like that? Somebody was just asking, it's an anonymous person, hence otherwise I would have said who it was, but they're just asking whether you think that access to data is helpful in these instances.
Certainly, and we're getting used to these things, but indeed they're more and more recurring. So heat waves, but also natural catastrophes that are derived from some of the consequences of climate change, and to all of these. And I was also hinting, of course, this is no European destination, but we've seen the horrible scenes in Morocco after the earthquake in Marrakesh, and the data, just ForwardKeys data, but obviously any kind of data, help us to monitor what's the reaction of the markets on these events that can be, of course, most of the times are unprecedented. Like, at least you cannot expect an earthquake or a heat wave or predict it very specifically, but you can follow what's the reaction of the market, and then anticipate for coming catastrophes or coming heat waves. So we know what's the impact been on heat waves this summer, and we can then learn from those numbers, from the reaction of the market, and expect something similar for next year. So indeed, the data is very helpful for these occasions. And again, it's I try to stay positive. I always say that I'm a very positive person, so I always try to see the glass half full, and I think this represents a perfect opportunity for destinations, especially in Southern Europe, to spread their visits more evenly throughout the year and battle with seasonality if Northern European traveler preferences change towards visiting when the climate is or the weather is slightly milder. So I think, again, this could be an opportunity, and yet again, the data is there to back their decision making.
Indeed. And I've got a question coming in here now, which is actually returning to China as an origin market, and just asking whether you've got any indications around Golden Week. This question was particularly about Chinese coming to France in regards to airline capacity, but I suppose as a more general question, are we seeing Golden Week interest?
I don't have any data to hand. I do know that we're having, we're releasing some figures in the next few days. We also have a webinar with a partner in Asia that I recommend everyone to check on our website and subscribe for that one. But it's looking positive indeed. We're seeing very positive signs of travel. So indeed, there's nothing that can stop the Chinese at the moment. with Europe, one of the issues remain, as I was mentioning with Japan, the connectivity. We're still really far from where we were pre-pandemic in terms of connectivity. One of the key reasons being the ban on European carriers to fly over Russia, which is the natural and quickest, well, shortest path, flight path from Europe to Asia, which of course is impacting on travel flight times and therefore on the fuel consumption and that impacting the fares. And that's something that is impacting both ways, both Europeans wanting to travel to the Far East and APAC travelers traveling to Europe. And actually that's one of the reasons that we attribute to a slower recovery, even though now all the destinations are open. So I guess this is again something to consider and be mindful that flights and ticket fares are very high at the moment and will be taking or consuming lots of resources from travelers, and therefore they will have less disposable income for other activities at destinations.
Indeed, thank you. I'd actually just like to move on to one of the slides that you put in there, because I think it's the first time we've seen one of these in your presentations about events. Obviously, you had the Tomatina slide there with the chart and the increase in visitors. And we've actually recently put a new channel on the Insight Hub specifically for events and tourism, because and I know that ForwardKeys have written various pieces and reports about it, because I think it's something that, well, destinations and operators, think about in terms of the best way to capitalize on that. And I suppose my question was, we saw something like the Tomatina was great for tourism and attracted visitors and people would go. But on the other side of that coin, we have seen with very large events, you can sometimes get a deterrent effect because people go, oh, I think it's going to be really busy. Maybe I'll go next year. So you sort of push the regular visitors over to the following year. And I suppose the question is, would we ever find an optimal sized event that saw an increase in visitors without putting people off? And I don't know if that's anything you've linked the size of the event in terms of the number of bookings.
I think Rachel is a very interesting topic, because as ever we have to have the sustainability and not just the environmental component, but cultural and social, and we have to think, of course, about, on the one hand, the host societies and also our capability as an industry to cope with those peaks of demand, which, as we saw on summer last year, at least for the UK and airports such as Amsterdam or Frankfurt, we showed that we were not capable to cope with that demand that came back with vengeance. You were mentioning how we monitor events. I mean, we recently launched a new events module in our Destination Gateway tool for destinations and industry players, and it's the perfect tool to let's say understand what is the real impact of an event from way in advance, but also past, and also compare your event with other events and see how the demand behaves. We've seen and we've reported also on our social media channels on several events. We commented on Tomorrowland in Belgium. We commented on Sziget in Hungary, and the impact that was having on inbound numbers. So far, obviously, we were just focusing on the positives and how these can become a catalyst for recurring visits and to to build that visitor loyalty, and also to uncover or maybe like promote your destination in some specific markets for all the times of the year, maybe not so much. And that's what I touched on your question, and is the fact that, okay, you are promoting your destination through an event or because there is an event, but it doesn't mean that you cannot use the same kind of promotion to attract visitors for other times of the year. Of course, you're putting the name of your destination out there for a specific moment of time, but then you can also expand that for other moments of the year, and then again fight seasonality and all the negative effects that can have, as I was mentioning earlier with the heat waves.
Absolutely, it's a very interesting topic, and I think it's one that we will discuss more and more when we're looking at destination strategy for visitors. So thank you for that. Juan, we don't have any more questions in the Q&A, so I think in a moment we'll wrap up. Just to remind everybody that this webinar recording will be on our Insight Hub, etoa.org/insight, and there you can find a wealth of reports that have all been summarised with the key takeaways by category. There is actually a separate category for ForwardKeys if you want to specifically look for their entries, but also lots of other categories like origin markets, destinations, etc. So have a look, etoa.org/insight if you haven't already. Just a reminder, as we said, Juan will be joining us in November at the GEM conference to look at forecasts for 2024. So in person, Juan, not a digital Juan. So we look to that. Yes, and also you can sign up for the ForwardKeys newsletter, can't you, Juan? I believe when you registered, you could tick the box, but if you didn't and you'd like to receive the newsletter, you can just let us know either by sending us an email or through the Q&A. And Juan, what's in the ForwardKeys newsletter?
So it's a monthly digest of all these trends, as we were mentioning earlier. One of the key things with these ever-changing trends is to be on top of whatever is happening out there, whatever is happening in the market, and understanding. So I think is ideal for those both destinations, but also businesses that perhaps don't rely on data so much, but is, I think, a good way of like starting to use the data for your decisions, and they can get it free of charge. And I think is a good way to stay on top of the things that we're analyzing.
Wonderful, thank you. So I think on that note, we will wrap things up. So thank you so much for joining us, Juan. Really appreciate your insights. And we look forward to seeing you in November, and wish everybody a pleasant day. Goodbye.
See you in London. Bye-bye. Thank you.